Welcome to the Zoom Bible study. This is the sixth lesson in our study on the Gospel of John, a gospel of light and glory, and one that beautifully reveals Jesus as the way, the truth, and the life. So far in our study, we've covered John's grand prologue, which declared Jesus to be the divine Word of God. And the prologue also took us back to the creation story. But now seen in a different light, John proclaims that through Jesus, a new creation has begun. And then in lesson 2, we looked at Jesus's first miracle of changing water into wine. The third lesson was about Jesus and Nicodemus. The fourth was about Jesus's encounter with the Samaritan woman at the well. And then last week, we looked at the feeding of the 5,000 and the bread of life discourse. And of course, that bread of life discourse is unique to the Gospel of John. Tonight, we take a look at another miracle, or as John likes to call them, signs. Tonight, we go to John chapter 9. It's a very lengthy passage about Jesus healing a man born blind and doing so on the Sabbath. The details about the miracle itself only take up a third of the narrative, if that much. The story is lengthy because most of it revolves around the disputes that the miracle provoked, the reactions to both Jesus and the man, and their interaction with each other. Now, because of our limited time, of course, it's too lengthy to read all of it. Instead, I'll move the story along by summarizing portions of it and then reading only the verses that relate to my primary themes. So here we go. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" "Neither," answered Jesus. "It wasn't because of anyone's sin, not this man's nor his parents. Rather, it was to let God's work shine forth in him." Now, since I just referenced this verse in this past Sunday sermon about suffering, I won't belabor the point. But anytime someone wants to connect a disease, an illness, an accident, a tragedy, or a natural disaster to someone's sin or a group of people's sins, remember Jesus's answer here in John 9. Point blank, Jesus was asked, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And point blank, Jesus answered, neither. Full stop, neither. And then Jesus declared it even more. It wasn't because of anyone's sin, not this man's nor his parents. And while we're at it, unfortunately, there are still some churches that teach and talk about generational curses and other nonsense like that. And the prophets of the Old Testament give the correction. And I'll simply quote Amy Jill Levine, who gets right to the point about this issue. Amy Jill writes, while Exodus 34:7 speaks of bringing punishment for the sin of the parents upon the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation, Ezekiel 18:20 puts a stop to this ideal. A child shall not carry the sin of a parent, and a parent shall not carry the sin of a child. Similarly, before Ezekiel, Jeremiah spoke of the day when they shall not still say, the parents ate sour grapes, and the children's teeth are blunted. For all shall die for their own sins. Everyone who eats sour grapes, that person's teeth shall be blunted. She's quoting Jeremiah 31, 29 through 30. And she points out that this is the same chapter that describes the new covenant to be written on people's heart. And by the way, let me add this. Nowhere, you didn't hear me stutter, nowhere in the New Testament is anything remotely like a generational curse taught. Our ministry is to extend compassion and care to those who are affected by disease and illness and accident and tragedy or natural disaster. We are to be Christ to them. Judging them or trying to give a spiritual reason for whatever has happened to them is not our job. And we'll see in our story, that's exactly what the Pharisees did. And Jesus called them blind. We'll get back to the story now. Jesus says, we must do the deeds of the one who sent me while it is still day. For the night is coming where no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Now, the themes of light and darkness are found throughout John's gospel. This isn't the first time that we've talked about that. But I want you to notice something else that Jesus said. He said, we must do the deeds of the one who sent me while it is still day. So from Jesus's own mouth, Jesus tells us that we share in his ministry. We are to be Christ to the world. With that, Jesus spat on the ground, made mud with his saliva, and smeared the blind man's eyes with the mud. Then Jesus said, go wash in the pool of Siloam. Siloam means sent. So the man went off to wash and came back able to see. Now, I'll just note that once again, we see Jesus using a different method for his healings. Sometimes Jesus simply spoke the word. Sometimes he simply touched somebody. At other times, the sick touched him. If Jesus had used just one method, I believe that we would try to replicate it or think that the power was in the method. The power, of course, is in Jesus. And we have a God that loves us and cares for us in the way which is best for us. There are no cookie cutter experiences when it comes to the grace and the love and the care of God. Moving the story along, we're told that the locals noticed that the one who used to be blind and the one that used to beg is no longer blind and is no longer begging. But not everybody agreed. Other locals believed that the healed one just looked like the familiar blind beggar. And the locals also inquire about how he was healed. And the man said that it was the one that they call Jesus. They took the man who had been born blind to the Pharisees. It had been on a Sabbath that Jesus had made the mud paste and opened the man's eyes. The Pharisees asked how he could see. He said to them, Jesus put mud on my eyes. I washed it off and now I can see. This prompted some Pharisees to say, This cannot be from God because he doesn't keep the Sabbath. Others argued, but how could a sinner perform signs like these? They were sharply divided. Then they addressed the blind man again. Since it was your eyes opened, what do you have to say about this Jesus? He said, he is a prophet. Now, I'll get back to the Sabbath issue in just a minute. Moving the story along, after this conversation, the Pharisees then go and question the man's parents. Now, they claim, they accept that it is their son, it was their son, but they deflect the questions by saying that he's old enough to answer for himself. And then the Pharisees go back to the blind man and interrogate him a second time. And this second time, the blind man seems to be getting frustrated with the Pharisees, and he replied to them with the classic line, listen, all I know is that I used to be blind, but now I can see. But the Pharisees keep on, and again, the man shuts them down and just really sends them over the edge by saying, why do you want to hear it all over again? Don't tell me you too want to become disciples of Jesus. I love this man. He has spunk. And when he replies back to him like that, it's no surprise that then the Pharisees kick him out. When Jesus heard of the expulsion, he sought out the healed man and asked, do you believe in the human one? Of course, the human one is a more inclusive title for Son of Man or even the chosen one. And the man answered, who is this one that I may believe? You're looking at him, Jesus replied. The human one is speaking to you. He said, Lord, I believe, and worshiped Jesus. Jesus said, I came into this world to execute justice, and that means to make things right, to make the sightless see and the seeing blind. Some of the Pharisees who were nearby heard this and said, you're not calling us blind, are you? To which Jesus replied, if you were blind, there would be no sin in that. But since you say, quote, we see, unquote, your sin remains. Now, as far as the bigger picture takeaways, the first is to see that there is a progression of believing for the blind man. And you hear me talk about this often. Our spiritual journeys are different. Our spiritual journeys are unique because we are unique. For some, their journey to believing is quick, while others, it takes some time. In the story of this healed blind man, we see him receiving a healing that he didn't ask for, but of course, he was thrilled when it happened. Then we see a little progression that he gets to the point of saying that Jesus was a prophet. He's not all the way there, but he's getting there. As Amy Jill points out in her book, prophets were known for the ability to heal. So it would be natural for him to say he's a prophet. But then he progresses a little bit more, and then before we know it, the man defends Jesus and even goes on the offensive for him by mocking the Pharisees, asking them if they too wanted to become believers in Jesus. By the way, we know from other gospel accounts that there were Pharisees who believed and followed Jesus. And let's not forget the most famous Pharisee of them all who became a believer, the Apostle Paul. Now, this progression continues in the healed blind man until finally we see him confessing his belief in Jesus. He not only received his physical sight, but now he sees Jesus as the light of the world. Amy Jill writes, and I quote, "For the purposes of the gospel, the man emerges as moving from darkness to light, from ignorance to knowledge, and from his own family to the family of Jesus." End of quote. And I'll say it again. Our faith journey is just that. It's a journey. The second big takeaway is about Sabbath. Now, what's going on with all this Sabbath stuff, and what is the message for us today? Now, the issue of healing on the Sabbath is an issue in all four Gospels because it was an issue of debate among the different movements or sects within Judaism. And all the different sects, they all loved God. And they were trying to show their love by a careful observance of the Torah commands. And in the Torah, God instructs the people of Israel to rest and to not work on the Sabbath. But a definition of what constituted work was never given. So with no definition, that left a lot of room for interpretation and debate about what was allowed and what was forbidden, so that God would indeed be honored on the Sabbath, which was a day of rest. Now, most of the differing movements or sects would have agreed with each other in that it was lawful to break the Sabbath in order to save a life. And, by the way, there were no prohibitions about healing someone on the Sabbath. That's not the issue either. The provocation is that Jesus made mud with his hands and then lifted that mud and smeared it on the man's eyes. To some, that was work. Also, the Pharisees probably argued that this miracle was not a life or death emergency. After all, this man had been born blind. Why not wait until the Sabbath was over? Then Jesus could have made all the mud pies that he wanted to make. But by healing the man born blind, by creating and smearing mud on the man's eyes, Jesus got to the true purpose of the Sabbath. He is provocative to make a point. In this debate about the Sabbath, Jesus's position was that the Sabbath was not only a day set apart for God, but it was also a day for God's love to be expressed in action. By healing the man on the Sabbath, Jesus is teaching us that every day is a day to heal, that every day is a day to do what is right and good. And wherever compassion and love and mercy and justice making are practiced, Jesus is present and God is honored. So no matter how religious a rule may appear to be, it should not ever keep us from helping others, no matter the day of the week. As Jesus said in our passage this evening, we must do the deeds of the one who sent me while it is still day. Let it be so. Amen. Until next week, when we continue our journey through the Gospel of John, may God's abundant grace and peace be with you.